Great. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be able to speak with you today, and I'm very pleased to announce that where is your paper's being published today in CMAJ Open? Yes. And you already have an interview with Hamilton Spectator, is that right? Which is great. So very, very excited about that. I'm really glad to be talking to you about the future of the medical journal. When you think about the future of the medical journal, what comes into your mind? And I'm going to talk, let's talk about, we were talking earlier about 5-year windows, 10-year windows, 15. So let's say maybe up to 15 years from now. What do you think is going to happen? Now, to put it in perspective, 15 years ago, almost 15 years ago, Wikipedia was launched. What has happened since then? 5 years ago, the iPad was launched. Okay, look at what's happened. So what is going to happen with medical journals? So think about that. Do you think that we're still going to have the stack of paper journals you see here? I mean, honestly, they've been around hundreds of years. New England Journal, 200 years old. BMJ, 150 years old. CMAJ is over 100 years old. Is the paper journal going to be here in 10, 15 years? You might say no, except actually a lot of publications, magazines, are actually doing well in print. A lot of people still like print. Do you think we're going to have a journal that's on your desktop? Do you think that's going to be here in 10 to 15 years? Or do you think nobody's going to have paper, nobody's going to really have desktop? It's all going to be like what we're doing now. It's all on our tablets, our smartphones. I know we're talking about how attached we are to our smartphones. Is that where it's going to be? Or is there a future that we don't even need? When you look at what's happened in the last 10 to 15 years, is there going to be some kind of computer thing in the air? Or are we going to have some amazing version of Google Glass where we are, patients in front of us and stuff is coming in front of our eyes as to what we should do? Is that the future of the medical journal? Or is it nothing? Do you think that 10 to 15 years from now, are we actually going to even need medical journals? Because the way we interact with knowledge has changed so much. Is the future that there will be no medical journal? Well, for my own career, I do hope the future will be somewhat brighter than that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about some of the pressures that medical journals are under and some of the things that we are doing to respond to these pressures, to give ourselves a bit of a future. It's actually, I know sometimes people say it's really hard to get published in medical journals, and I know you don't have to feel sorry for us as medical journal editors, but working in a medical journal there are a lot of pressures coming in on us. Sometimes it feels like, oh my goodness, there's so many things going on. Let me tell you what some of these are. Well, obvious, money. Money is probably the biggest issue with most medical journals. Actually, not too much money, obviously, but lack of money. What's happened with the money issue? Well, a lot of it has to do with pharmaceutical companies and their advertising. Many journals have historically relied on pharmaceutical advertising. For example, the CMAJ in the past, 70% of its income came from pharma ads. Well, with the economic downturn, Canadian medical journals in 1 year had their revenues from pharmaceutical companies drop by a third. In the States, it was 45% of revenues dropped in 1 year. And that was just the start of the downturn. It's continued from there. It continued down more now. It's have a little bit of an uptick. But the days, those glory days when medical journals made tons of money for their associations, those aren't really there anymore. Well, what else has affected money? Well, I'm putting the CMA up here, and it's not to single them out, but associations had to make some decisions. They also face financial pressure, and they have to decide, are we going to fund? Now these journals don't make us money. They used to make us millions. Now we actually have to pay to keep them going. So associations sort of went, should we actually, is this where we want to put our money? Individual physicians make decisions. Okay, if with journal subscriptions, again, if you're in a university and you've got access through university libraries, but a lot of individual physicians decide, well, if I can sort of get this journal versus another, these are expensive. Which one am I gonna pick? Some journals saw their individual subscriptions dropped by 2/3 within a few years. So the finance is a huge issue. So not only do we have not enough money coming in, we have to invest in technology. We've already talked about some of the rapid changes in technology. And so journals have had to respond. So before we could just publish in paper, right? And it's like, oh no, now we need a version for everyone's desktop. So we invest in that. Big, expensive websites. And it's like, now everyone's into apps. Okay, all right, now we're going to pay and we're going to have an app. Oh, nobody wants apps anymore. They want mobile versions. So you keep have to invest to try and keep up with the changing technology. Increased competition. I think all of you have probably seen a lot about the predatory journals that are out there. Jeffrey Beall's list. I think probably everyone's familiar with Jeffrey Beall's list. These are proliferating. Every day I get invitations to submit my lovely research, which is at the moment quite non-existent, to these journals. And they all sound so fancy. And I kind of don't know which of them are real and which ones aren't real, and are they indexed? And all I know is that they do want my money, and they seem to think that it's, that they really want to publish my stuff. And so there's a lot of competition. So a lot of the general medical journals, a lot of the established journals are facing competition. And of course, and I've alluded to this already, the way we've talked about this morning, we're going to hear more about this afternoon, the way we interact, the way we get knowledge is different than it used to be. In the past it was you opened your medical journal, maybe you went to a conference, you talked to colleagues. That's generally how. Well, that's not necessarily. We talked a bit this morning about the world of Twitter. There's a lot of information exchange happening in the medical field. Actually, physicians, I know that physicians have been, or the healthcare communities was slow to interact, but the research that's been done in Canada shows that one of the largest groups are actually physicians, sort of mid-range career. They're doing a lot of interacting on Twitter. So, very right. Readers, authors, they're asking the journals, okay, what are you doing to address this changing world? What are you doing? And so, as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have to do to keep you guys engaged with our journals, to keep you thinking that it's a viable thing for you. Before I go and do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the CMAJ, just so that, because I'm going to use this as example. So we have two journals. One is CMAJ, which is our flagship journal, and the other one is CMAJ Open, and I'm the editor of that. So I think most of you know about CMAJ. It's a general medical journal. I'm going to talk about impact factor. I'm not going to go into huge things about the flaws, but it's got an impact factor of about 5.8. It's in print. It's online, it's digital versions, mobile versions. It goes out in print 18 times a year to about 70,000 physicians, 20,000 in a digital version. And then, of course, on the website, we have millions of international hits in that. That is a full-service journal. It's got everything from news, to humanities, to research. Research that's published in there has to be high impact. The second journal we have, and I was the one who launched this one along with our team, is CMAJ Open. This is a completely, by the way, research in CMAJ is open access. This is complete research. It is open access. It is, we decided to do this journal because we found that we were actually saying no to about 95% of the research that we were receiving, and it wasn't that